A few months ago, I dug into a garden bed that used to be full of life. Rich, dark, and practically crawling with earthworms. This time, nothing. The soil looked decent on the surface, but it felt hollow beneath. No tunnels, no castings, no movement. And that's when it hit me. Something I'd been doing was driving the worms away. That garden bed had once been my most productive. But in trying to tidy it up, trimming down mulch, switching up fertilizers, and moving a few plants, I had unknowingly created a hostile environment for my most valuable underground allies. Earthworms aren't just nice to have, they're essential. They aerate the soil, break down organic matter, and feed your plants with their castings. If your garden is losing earthworms, you're losing more than you think. Have you ever noticed a sudden drop in worm activity in your soil? Let me know in the comments. What changed in your garden, and did you figure out why? Let's dive into 7 common mistakes that might be repelling earthworms, without you even realizing it. So, one of the big mistakes is over-tidying the garden and, removing thatch or mulch too often. Worms really thrive in moist, covered environments that are full of organic matter. When we scrape our gardens bare, removing fallen leaves, over-trimming mulch, or de-thatching too aggressively, we're basically taking away their food and their shelter. You know, I used to clear every last leaf in my raised beds thinking I was cleaning up, but honestly, that layer of decaying organic material is like a buffet for worms. When it's gone, they just move on. I learned to just let nature do its thing. These days I chop and drop spent crops and top them with shredded leaves. And within a few days, worm activity returns. So, number 2, using high-acid soil amendments or fertilizers. Worms are, pretty sensitive to soil pH. Most species do best in neutral to slightly alkaline environments. If you're using acidic amendments, like elemental sulfur, pine needles in bulk, or those sulfate-based fertilizers, you could be creating a chemical imbalance that actually pushes worms out. I actually once added a fast-acting fertilizer labeled sulfur of iron to fix a chlorosis issue I was having. It worked for the leaves, sure, but my worms vanished within a week. Now, I test my soil's pH a lot more carefully and stick with milder, worm-safe sources of iron or organic inputs. So, number 3, attracting too many natural predators. This one's kinda tricky because a biodiverse garden will always have predators, but if you're unintentionally encouraging a surplus of ants, centipedes, or birds without balancing their populations, your worms might be in retreat. One raised bed in my garden had developed a massive black ant colony under the mulch. I didn't notice right away, but the worms sure did. The ants were raiding egg cocoons and even going after small red wigglers. I had to disrupt their nest gently, and diversify the ecosystem with mulch changes and more ground cover to balance things out. Okay, so, number 4 is using spicy or irritant organic repellents without really realizing it. A lot of gardeners, myself included, love to experiment with DIY sprays, especially those made from chili, garlic, or even mustard, to help control pests. While these sprays can help keep aphids or whiteflies at bay, they might also end up irritating your worms. One spring I actually tried a homemade mustard water flush to bring jumping worms up to the surface. It did the trick, but honestly, it also cleared out my regular worms, and that patch of soil took quite a while to bounce back. So, if you're applying anything spicy, peppery, or acidic to your soil, even if it's organic, just keep an eye on your worm population over the next few days and see how they react. So, number 5, transferring contaminated soil or plant material. When I first started gardening seriously, I didn't think twice about swapping plants and soil with neighbors. But I've since learned the hard way that this can accidentally spread invasive worm species or even repel native ones through incompatible soil biology. I once moved some flowering perennials from a friend's garden into one of my best beds, and, weeks later, the earthworm numbers dropped, and I noticed clumps of unusual, overly granular castings. A soil test and inspection revealed early signs of jumping worms. From that day forward, I started cleaning root balls, using sterile potting mix, and inspecting every transplant for worms or cocoons. So, number 6. Leaving soil exposed to light and drying out. Worms are photophobic. They avoid light at all costs. Bare soil not only heats up and dries out faster, but it also lets sunlight penetrate deeper, creating a pretty hostile environment. Earthworms will retreat deep underground or even abandon an area entirely if there's no consistent mulch cover. After testing this myself in one bed with no mulch, I saw a dramatic drop in worm presence in just 5 days. By reapplying shredded native grass and keeping the bed moist, I had them back within a week. Protecting the topsoil layer is honestly one of the simplest ways to support healthy worm populations. 7. Using chemical fertilizers or pesticides even sparingly. Even if you only apply synthetic products once or twice a year, they can have a lasting impact. Fertilizers with high salt content and chemical pesticides disrupt the delicate microbial and pH balance that worms rely on. Some insecticides like imidacloprid or carbaryl, which you might recognize from products like 7, are known to be lethal to earthworms, even in small doses. In one bed, I used a granular lawn product near the garden edge to manage armyworms. The runoff from just one rain diluted the granules into the nearby raised bed, and worm activity dropped to 0 in 48 hours. It took me months of rebuilding that soil with compost, leaf mold, and worm castings to get them back. Earthworms are nature's underground workforce, but they're sensitive and they vote with their tails. If they're disappearing from your garden, they're trying to tell you something. So what practices have you used that brought your worms back? Have you ever accidentally scared them off? Leave a comment, I'd love to hear your story. If this guide helped you understand what might be repelling worms from your garden, hit that subscribe button for more field-tested advice from real backyard experiments. Share this with a gardener friend who's been wondering why their soil feels lifeless, and re-watch whenever you're planning your next soil rebuild. At Hydrohaven, we're not just growing plants. We're rebuilding living soil, one worm at a time.